Hard Target begins in New Orleans, where the city's dark streets and dangerous corners hide a secret game that is far more brutal than ordinary crime. The story introduces us to a mysterious man named Chance Boudreaux, a tough and independent former Marine who is struggling to find steady work. Chance is experienced, physically strong, and confident, but his life is far from comfortable. He spends his days looking for jobs and trying to survive without depending on anyone. At the same time, a young woman named Natasha Binder arrives in the city searching for her missing father, Douglas Binder. Natasha has been desperately trying to find him because she believes something terrible may have happened to him. Her father had disappeared after becoming involved with dangerous people, and the authorities have not given her the answers she needs. Instead of simply accepting that he is gone, Natasha decides to search for him herself. Her investigation eventually brings her into contact with Chance, whose life is about to change completely because of her arrival. Natasha quickly discovers that finding her father will not be easy. She needs someone who understands the streets of New Orleans and can protect her from people who may want her investigation to stop. Chance becomes involved almost by accident, but once he realizes that Natasha is genuinely in danger, he decides to help her. Their first encounters reveal Chance's personality. He is not the kind of man who talks unnecessarily or tries to impress people. He prefers action, and his military background has given him a strong sense of survival. Natasha, meanwhile, is determined and unwilling to walk away from her father. As the two begin looking for clues, they learn that Douglas Binder had been living a difficult life and had made enemies. However, the truth behind his disappearance is much darker than they initially imagine. Chance begins to understand that this is not simply a missing person case. Someone powerful has been hiding information, and the people involved are prepared to use violence to protect their secret. The movie then starts revealing the terrifying world surrounding the disappearance. A wealthy and ruthless man named Émile Fouchon is operating an illegal hunting business unlike anything ordinary people could imagine. Fouchon does not hunt animals. Instead, he organizes hunts in which human beings become the prey. Wealthy clients pay enormous amounts of money for the opportunity to track and kill desperate people. These victims are selected because they are vulnerable, often homeless or struggling individuals who have little protection. Fouchon and his associates provide the hunters with weapons, information, and a limited amount of time. The victims are then released into dangerous surroundings and forced to run for their lives. To Fouchon, the entire process is entertainment and business. His cold attitude makes it clear that he has completely removed morality from his world. He sees human life as something that can be bought and sold for the pleasure of wealthy customers. One of the most frightening aspects of Fouchon's operation is the way he carefully controls everything. His right-hand man, Pic Van Cleef, is an experienced and merciless killer who helps organize the hunts. Together, Fouchon and Van Cleef create an environment where the victims have almost no chance of survival. The hunters are trained, heavily armed, and given advantages from the beginning. The victims, on the other hand, are often frightened and unprepared. This makes the game extremely one-sided, but the criminals do not care. Their goal is not competition, their goal is domination. Fouchon believes that people reveal their true nature when they are pushed into a fight for survival. He enjoys watching his wealthy customers experience the excitement of hunting a living target. What begins as a secret criminal business becomes one of the central dangers of the story, and Chance will eventually find himself directly connected to it. While Chance and Natasha continue searching for answers, their investigation begins to uncover connections between Natasha's missing father and the people behind the hunting operation. Chance realizes that Natasha's father may have become one of the victims of this brutal organization. Natasha is shocked by what she learns, but instead of giving up, she becomes even more determined to discover the truth. Chance knows that confronting men like Fouchon will be extremely dangerous, especially because these criminals have money, weapons, and connections. Still, he cannot simply leave Natasha alone. Their relationship begins developing as they move through increasingly dangerous situations, with Chance becoming both her guide and protector. The more they investigate, the clearer it becomes that they have entered a world where ordinary rules do not apply. Chance's background becomes especially important as the danger increases. His military training has taught him how to stay calm under pressure, read dangerous situations, and react quickly when violence begins. Although he is not looking for trouble, trouble repeatedly finds him. His strength and fighting ability make him a serious threat to anyone who underestimates him. Fouchon's organization, however, has never encountered someone quite like Chance. The criminals are accustomed to victims who are frightened and isolated, but Chance is different. He understands how hunters think, and he knows how to turn an enemy's confidence against them. This creates the possibility that the hunters may eventually become the hunted. As Natasha gets closer to discovering what happened to her father, Fouchon becomes aware that someone is interfering with his operation. He cannot allow outsiders to expose his business, and Natasha's investigation makes her a potential target. Chance's involvement makes the situation even more dangerous because he is capable of fighting back. The criminals begin viewing Chance not simply as an obstacle, but as a serious problem that needs to be removed. Meanwhile, Chance is slowly realizing that protecting Natasha means stepping into a conflict that could cost him his life. The mystery surrounding Douglas Binder is no longer just a personal matter for Natasha. It has become a dangerous battle against a criminal organization that believes. Meanwhile, Emile Fouchon continues running his secret human hunting operation with complete confidence. His wealthy customers arrive believing they are participating in the ultimate sport, and Fouchon makes sure everything is arranged for their entertainment. His assistant, Pic Van Cleef, is responsible for many of the practical details, and proves that he is just as ruthless as his employer. The two men have created a system where desperate people are selected as targets, given almost no chance to survive, and then hunted for profit. Fauchon has no sympathy for his victims. He sees them as disposable pieces in a game designed for rich clients. His calm behavior makes the operation even more disturbing because he does not act like a man who thinks he is doing something wrong. Instead, he behaves as if he has created an ordinary business and simply found a way to make money from the darkest side of human nature. The victims chosen for these hunts are often people who have been pushed to the edges of society. Because they have little money or influence, Fouchon assumes nobody important will investigate when they disappear. This is exactly what makes his organization so difficult to expose. The victims are isolated, while the hunters have money, weapons, transportation, and information. Fouchon believes that the entire system is under his control. However, his confidence begins to weaken when Chance starts interfering. Chance does not behave like the ordinary people Fouchon is accustomed to hunting. His military training has made him extremely aware of his surroundings, and he understands how armed men operate. Even when he appears relaxed, he is constantly observing potential threats. This makes him difficult to surprise, and Fouchon begins to realize that Natasha has found someone who could become a serious obstacle. Natasha continues following the trail left behind by her father. She learns more about the circumstances surrounding his disappearance and becomes increasingly convinced that something terrible happened to him. Her emotions are mixed with anger because she feels that the truth has been deliberately hidden from her. Chance understands her frustration, but he also knows that emotional decisions could put them both in greater danger. He tries to convince her to be careful, yet Natasha refuses to sit back and wait. Her determination is one of the reasons Chance continues helping her. Although he initially becomes involved because he wants to earn money and survive, his motivation gradually changes. He begins to care about Natasha's safety and wants to make sure she gets the answers she deserves. As they move closer to the people connected to Douglas Binder, Chance's suspicions about the human hunting operation become stronger. He begins to recognize that the criminals are organized and that they have been doing this for a long time. The operation is not controlled by random street criminals. It is backed by wealthy individuals who can hide behind their money and social position. Fouchon is the person who brings everything together. He identifies potential victims, arranges the locations, provides the hunters with what they need, and makes sure the clients receive the experience they paid for. Van Cleef helps him enforce the rules and eliminate anyone who causes trouble. Their partnership is built on cruelty and efficiency. They believe they can continue forever because nobody has been strong enough to challenge them. But Chance is beginning to change that balance. When he becomes aware of the dangers surrounding Natasha, he starts using his own methods to protect her. He knows that confronting the criminals directly may be unavoidable, but he also understands that rushing into a fight could get Natasha killed. His approach is therefore careful. He watches, investigates, and waits for the right moment. Chance's ability to remain calm separates him from the criminals he is facing. They are driven by money and pleasure, while he is driven by survival and a desire to protect someone who has become important to him. This difference becomes increasingly significant as the conflict develops. Fouchon eventually learns more about Chance and begins taking him seriously. A man who has survived military service and knows how to fight is not an easy target. Fouchon is accustomed to controlling his victims through fear, but Chance does not respond to fear in the same way. Instead of running away, he becomes more determined. Fouchon realizes that if Chance continues helping Natasha, the entire operation could be exposed. Therefore, the problem must be dealt with before Chance gets close enough to reveal everything. Van Cleef is more than willing to handle the situation, and his experience makes him one of the most dangerous people in Fouchon's organization. The tension increases when Chance and Natasha realize that they are no longer simply investigating the past. They are now being watched by people who want them to stop. Every conversation and every location could become a trap. Natasha begins to understand the seriousness of the situation, but she still wants to find her father. Chance tells her that the truth may come with a price, and she accepts that risk. Their partnership becomes stronger as they continue forward together. Natasha provides the emotional reason for the investigation, while Chance provides the physical protection and experience needed to survive the dangers around them. At the same time, the hunters prepare for another deadly game. Fouchon sees the hunt as entertainment, but Chance sees the same world from the opposite perspective. He knows what it means to be pursued, and he understands that survival depends on preparation and awareness. The criminals believe they are always the hunters, but the arrival of Chance creates a new possibility. A man with his skills could turn their own methods against them. That possibility is exactly what makes him dangerous. Fouchon may have money, influence, and a network of killers, but Chance has something they cannot easily control: the ability to fight back. As Natasha's search brings her closer to the truth, Chance becomes increasingly committed to helping her. He is no longer simply a stranger hired to assist her. He has become her protector and the one person standing between her and the criminals who want her investigation to end. The conflict is now unavoidable. Fouchon wants to protect his secret business. Natasha wants to discover what happened to her father, and Chance is prepared to stand between them and anyone who tries to hurt her. The stage is being set for a violent confrontation because the criminals have begun to realize that Chance will not disappear quietly. Their next move will be designed to eliminate the threat, but they may soon discover that trying to hunt Chance Boudreaux is very different from hunting an ordinary victim. The situation becomes even more dangerous as Chance Boudreaux and Natasha Binder continue searching for the truth about Natasha's missing father. By this point, Chance understands that the people responsible are not ordinary criminals who can simply be confronted and arrested. They are organized, wealthy, and willing to use violence whenever someone threatens their secret. Natasha is still determined to find Douglas Binder, but she is beginning to understand how serious the situation has become. Chance tries to keep her calm while watching every movement around them. His instincts tell him that they are being followed, and he knows that the criminals will eventually make their move. For Chance, the biggest challenge is no longer simply finding clues. It is keeping Natasha alive long enough to discover the truth. The criminal organization controlled by Émile Fouchon continues operating in the shadows. Fouchon has built his business around wealthy customers who want an experience more dangerous than anything they can find in ordinary entertainment. His human hunting games give them exactly what they want. He chooses vulnerable people as targets and turns their desperation into an opportunity for profit. Pick Van Cleef works beside him, helping arrange the hunts and dealing with anyone who becomes a problem. Van Cleef is particularly dangerous because he does not need a reason to hurt someone. He is cold, disciplined, and completely comfortable with violence. Fouchon depends on him because he knows Van Cleef will follow orders without hesitation. Together, the two men believe their operation is protected by money and secrecy. But Chance is becoming a serious problem for them. Unlike the victims Fouchon normally chooses, Chance has military experience and knows how to survive when surrounded by danger. He understands that criminals often become careless when they believe they have complete control. Instead of allowing fear to control him, he uses patience and observation. He pays attention to the people around Natasha and notices details that she might overlook. Chance knows that if someone wants to attack them, they will probably wait until they think he is distracted. That is why he refuses to become careless. He has survived dangerous situations before, and he knows that the smallest mistake can have deadly consequences. Natasha's emotional connection to her father makes the investigation difficult for her. She wants to believe that Douglas is still alive somewhere and that they will eventually find him. At the same time, the evidence they uncover makes that hope harder to maintain. Chance does not want to destroy her hope, but he also refuses to lie to her. He understands that she deserves the truth, even if the truth is painful. Their relationship becomes stronger because Natasha begins trusting his judgment. Chance may not know exactly what happened to her father yet, but he knows the people involved are dangerous. He also knows that Natasha cannot face them alone. As they move forward, the criminals begin increasing the pressure. They want Natasha to stop asking questions, and they want Chance to leave the situation before he becomes an even bigger threat. But intimidation does not work on Chance the way they expect. His past has taught him to deal with difficult circumstances, and he refuses to be controlled by threats. Instead, he becomes more focused. He begins thinking about how the criminals operate and what their next move could be. He knows that if they are connected to Douglas Binder's disappearance, there must be a location, a witness, or some piece of evidence that can connect them to the crime. The challenge is finding that evidence before the criminals find him. Meanwhile, Fouchon remains confident that he can control the situation. He does not initially see Chance as someone who can destroy his operation. To Fouchon, everyone has a price and every problem has a solution. He has spent years building a network based on fear and money, and he believes that a single former Marine cannot change anything. However, Van Cleef understands that Chance may be more dangerous than Fouchon realizes. He recognizes that Chance has the kind of experience that makes him difficult to predict. Van Cleef is not interested in underestimating him. He wants to eliminate Chance before the situation grows out of control. The tension reaches another level when Chance begins to understand the real nature of the hunts. The idea that wealthy people are paying to chase human beings horrifies him, especially because the victims are often people who cannot defend themselves. Chance has seen violence before, but there is something different about this operation. These criminals are not fighting for survival or protecting themselves from an immediate threat. They are killing people for entertainment. Fouchon has turned murder into a luxury service, and the hunters believe their money gives them permission to do whatever they want. Chance sees the operation as something that cannot be allowed to continue. Natasha is also forced to face a painful possibility. Her father may have become part of this terrible game. The thought is almost impossible for her to accept, but she refuses to turn away. She wants to know what happened to him and why nobody helped him. Chance stays beside her as they continue searching, even though he knows the investigation could put his own life at risk. He could walk away at any time, but he chooses not to. His connection to Natasha has changed his priorities. He is no longer thinking only about himself. He wants to help her find justice for her father, and that decision places him directly against Fouchon. As the criminals prepare to deal with Chance, He begins realizing that the safest option may no longer be possible. He and Natasha cannot keep running from danger forever. Eventually, they will have to confront the people behind the operation. Chance knows that he must be prepared for an attack because the criminals will not warn him before they strike. His military instincts tell him to expect the unexpected. He studies his surroundings, watches suspicious movements, and stays ready to react. Natasha begins seeing another side of him as well. Beneath his tough exterior, Chance is someone who genuinely cares about protecting innocent people. He may have started his journey as a man simply trying to survive, but now he has a reason to fight. Fouchon's organization begins moving closer to Chance and Natasha, and the threat becomes impossible to ignore. The criminals believe they can surround Chance with enough men and weapons to force him into submission. They do not understand that Chance is at his most dangerous when he is cornered. His training has taught him how to fight when the odds are against him, and his determination grows stronger whenever someone threatens the people he cares about. The hunters are used to chasing helpless victims who have nowhere to go, but Chance is not helpless. If they decide to make him their target, they may discover that their usual rules no longer apply. By the end of this stage of the story, the conflict between Chance and Fouchon is becoming personal. Natasha's search has exposed a horrifying secret, and Chance has chosen to stand with her rather than walk away. Fouchon now has a serious threat inside his world, while Chance knows that powerful men are preparing to come after him. The balance is beginning to shift. The criminals still have numbers, money, and weapons, but Chance has experience, determination, and the ability to survive under pressure. What Fouchon does not realize is that his greatest mistake may be treating Chance like one of his ordinary targets. Soon the hunter's game will become much more dangerous, and Chance will have to use everything he knows to stay alive and protect Natasha. Chance Boudreaux and Natasha Binder are now much closer to the dangerous truth surrounding Natasha's missing father. What began as a desperate search has turned into a fight against people who have no intention of allowing their secret to be exposed. Chance understands that the criminals are watching them, so he becomes even more careful about where they go and who they trust. Natasha is still driven by the hope of finding her father, but the evidence around them is becoming increasingly disturbing. Chance tries to prepare her for the possibility that they may discover something painful. Even so, he refuses to let her face the danger alone. His decision to protect Natasha has placed him directly in the path of Émile Fouchon and Pic Van Cleef, two men who have built their lives around violence and control. Fouchon continues organizing his brutal hunting games for wealthy customers. To him, the victims are simply targets, and the hunters are paying customers who expect a thrilling experience. He arranges everything carefully, making sure the hunters have enough information to track their victims while keeping the entire operation hidden from the authorities. Van Cleef assists him and makes certain that anyone who interferes is dealt with quickly. Their confidence comes from years of operating without serious consequences. They believe that the victims they choose are too powerless to fight back and that anyone who discovers the truth can be silenced. However, Chance represents a completely different kind of threat. He understands their tactics, and he is not intimidated by their reputation. Chance's military experience becomes increasingly important as he prepares for the danger ahead. He knows that an enemy does not always attack directly. Sometimes the most dangerous move is to make someone feel safe before striking. Because of this, Chance pays attention to small details. He watches the people around him and studies the streets as he moves through them. Natasha notices his caution and begins to understand why he is so serious. Chance is not being paranoid without reason. He has already seen enough evidence to know that the people following them are capable of murder. He wants Natasha to stay focused, but he also wants her to be prepared for the possibility that their investigation could suddenly turn violent. Natasha continues looking for information about Douglas Binder, following every lead she can find. She is emotionally exhausted, but her determination remains strong. She cannot accept that her father simply disappeared without a reason. She believes there must be someone who knows what happened, and she is willing to keep searching until she finds that person. Chance respects her determination, although he knows it can also place her in danger. He reminds her that the people they are investigating are not interested in answering questions. They are interested in making sure nobody asks those questions in the first place. Natasha understands the risk but refuses to stop. Her father is the reason she came to New Orleans, and now she feels that walking away would mean abandoning him. The deeper they investigate, the more Chance begins to understand the structure of Fouchon's operation. He realizes that the victims are deliberately selected because they are unlikely to receive immediate attention when they disappear. The hunters, meanwhile, are wealthy and protected by their social status. They can pay for expensive weapons, transportation, and information without worrying about the consequences. The entire system is designed to make the victims feel powerless. Chance sees the cruelty in that arrangement and becomes determined to disrupt it. He knows that simply defeating one criminal will not be enough. If Fouchon is allowed to continue, other victims will be hunted after Natasha's case is over. Fouchon begins taking Chance more seriously as the former Marine continues interfering with his plans. He is no longer dealing with a random stranger who happened to become involved in Natasha's investigation. Chance has become an obstacle that must be removed. Fouchon discusses the situation with Van Cleef, and the two men consider how best to deal with him. Van Cleef is confident in his own abilities and believes that Chance can be eliminated like anyone else. Fouchon agrees, but he also understands that Chance is different from the usual targets. The former Marine is trained, experienced, and unpredictable. This makes him both dangerous and interesting to the men who are accustomed to controlling every part of their hunts. As the pressure increases, Chance and Natasha find themselves surrounded by a growing threat. They cannot easily determine who might be working for Fouchon, which makes every encounter suspicious. Chance tries to keep Natasha moving while gathering enough information to expose the criminals. He knows that if they attack Fouchon without evidence, the operation may simply disappear and reappear somewhere else. He needs to understand how the organization works and where its victims are being taken. Natasha's investigation gives him the emotional motivation, while his own experience gives him the practical ability to survive. Together, they begin forming a partnership that becomes increasingly important to the story. At the same time, Fouchon's hunters continue preparing for their deadly games. They are given instructions and equipment and believe they are entering another exciting competition. The difference this time is that Chance has become part of the picture. His presence creates uncertainty because the criminals cannot predict how he will react. They are accustomed to victims running away in panic, but Chance knows how to use the environment and turn pressure into an advantage. He understands that fear can make people careless, and he intends to make his enemies pay for every mistake they make. The criminals believe they are in control because they have weapons and numbers, but Chance knows that confidence can become a weakness. Natasha also begins seeing the deeper side of Chance. At first, she sees him as someone who is helping because he has his own reasons, but she gradually realizes that he genuinely wants to protect her. Chance is not motivated by money anymore. He could have walked away when the situation became dangerous, but he continues staying beside her. Their trust grows as they face more threats together. Natasha gives Chance a reason to keep fighting, while Chance gives Natasha the confidence to continue searching. Their connection becomes an important part of the story because neither of them can complete the mission alone. Eventually, the danger moves from the background into the center of their lives. Chance realizes that Fouchon's men are not simply trying to scare them away. They are preparing to attack. He knows that the next encounter could become a fight for survival. Instead of panicking, Chance prepares himself. His military instincts take over as he thinks about escape routes, possible ambush points, and ways to protect Natasha. He knows he cannot predict exactly what the criminals will do, but he can make sure he is ready when they move. Natasha trusts him enough to follow his instructions even when she does not fully understand the danger. The conflict is now approaching a turning point. Fouchon still believes his money and organization make him untouchable, while Van Cleef is eager to prove that Chance can be defeated. Chance, however, is no longer simply trying to uncover the truth. He is preparing to fight back against the entire system that destroyed innocent lives. Natasha's search for her father has exposed a world of cruelty, and Chance has decided that he will not allow Fouchon to continue without resistance. The hunters may believe they are preparing for another easy kill, but Chance is ready to challenge them on their own ground. From this point forward, the chase will become more intense, and the people who once considered themselves untouchable will finally face someone who refuses to become their victim. The conflict between Chance Boudreaux and Émile Fouchon reaches a much more dangerous stage as Chance gets closer to the truth about Natasha Binder's father. By now, Chance has completely understood that Fouchon's operation is built around the cruel idea of hunting human beings for entertainment. The wealthy customers who participate in these hunts believe they are enjoying an exclusive sport, but the people they hunt are fighting for their lives. Chance cannot accept this kind of cruelty, especially after realizing that Natasha's missing father may have been caught in the same deadly system. Natasha is still determined to uncover everything, but she knows that the danger around them is becoming impossible to ignore. Chance stays close because he understands that the criminals will do whatever it takes to stop her. Fouchon becomes increasingly frustrated with the situation. He has always believed that money, influence, and fear are enough to control people. His operation has survived because most victims have no one powerful enough to fight for them. But Chance has changed the rules. He is not interested in money or intimidated by Fouchon's reputation. His military background has taught him to remain calm when surrounded by danger, and he knows how to fight when escape is not possible. Fouchon begins realizing that Chance cannot be handled like an ordinary target. The more pressure Fouchon applies, the more determined Chance becomes. This makes Chance a dangerous enemy because he has nothing to lose by continuing the fight. Natasha's investigation continues to uncover pieces of her father's final days. Every new clue is painful, but she refuses to stop. She has already come too far to turn away. Chance understands that the truth may be difficult for her to accept, yet he supports her decision to continue. He also begins seeing Natasha differently. At first, he was simply helping a woman who needed protection, but now he has developed a genuine concern for her. He knows she is carrying emotional pain while being forced to deal with people who want her dead. Chance becomes determined to make sure that Natasha gets the answers she came for, even if he has to fight his way through Fouchon's entire organization. The criminals begin increasing their efforts to track Chance. They know that he is the biggest obstacle standing between them and the safety of their operation. If Chance reaches the right people with enough evidence, Fouchon's carefully protected world could collapse. Van Cleef therefore begins treating Chance as a personal challenge. He studies the former Marine and looks for a weakness. Van Cleef has confidence in his own fighting abilities and believes that eventually Chance will be forced into a situation where skill alone will not be enough. But Chance is not careless. He understands that Van Cleef is dangerous, and he knows that underestimating him could be fatal. As the danger increases, Chance becomes more aggressive in protecting Natasha. He knows that simply reacting to attacks will keep them trapped in Fouchon's game. They need to create their own opportunities. Chance begins thinking about how to expose the criminals and how to use their confidence against them. Fouchon's organization has money and manpower, but it also has patterns. The criminals expect victims to behave in certain ways, and Chance intends to use those expectations against them. He knows that an enemy who thinks he understands your next move can easily be manipulated. Chance has survived because he remains unpredictable. The human hunting operation also begins revealing the true character of the people involved. The wealthy hunters are not simply looking for excitement, they are willing to kill strangers for pleasure. Fouchon encourages their behavior because it keeps the business profitable. Van Cleef makes sure the rules are enforced through violence. Chance sees the entire organization as a machine designed to turn vulnerable people into disposable targets. This realization strengthens his determination. He is no longer fighting only because Natasha needs help. He wants to destroy the operation itself so that other people will not suffer the same fate. Natasha begins to understand that Chance may be the only person capable of challenging Fouchon. She trusts his instincts and follows his instructions even when the situation becomes frightening. Their partnership is now based on more than necessity. Chance has become someone Natasha can rely on, while Natasha has become one of the strongest reasons Chance continues moving forward. Their growing trust also creates emotional tension, because both understand that the fight could end badly. They know that Fouchon has already shown that human life means nothing to him. If he believes Chance and Natasha are threatening his business, he will not hesitate to remove them. Fouchon eventually decides that stronger measures are necessary. He cannot allow Chance to continue interfering, so the pressure around them increases. Chance realizes that the criminals may attempt to attack Natasha directly because they know she is his greatest concern. This forces him to be even more careful. Protecting Natasha is difficult because she is determined to continue investigating, and Chance cannot keep her completely away from danger. Instead, he teaches her to stay alert and trust the warning signs around them. Natasha becomes more confident as she learns to recognize when something feels wrong. The confrontation with Van Cleef becomes more likely as both men move closer to each other. Van Cleef believes his experience makes him superior, while Chance relies on discipline and survival instincts. Their approaches to violence are completely different. Van Cleef fights because he enjoys the power it gives him, while Chance fights because he has a reason to survive. This difference is important because Chance does not need to prove that he is the strongest man in the room. He only needs to stay alive long enough to protect Natasha and stop Fouchon. Van Cleef's pride, however, may force him to take unnecessary risks. The tension continues building as Chance and Natasha approach the heart of the conspiracy. They know that the closer they get, the more dangerous the criminals will become. But turning back is no longer an option. Natasha needs to know what happened to her father, and Chance needs to make sure that Fouchon cannot continue hurting innocent people. The two of them move forward despite the growing threat, understanding that every new step could lead to an ambush. Chance remains focused, watching for signs that the criminals are preparing their next move. Fouchon still believes that the situation can be controlled. His confidence comes from the fact that he has survived for a long time without facing serious consequences. He believes Chance will eventually make a mistake, and when that happens, the former Marine will be eliminated. But Fouchon does not understand that Chance is becoming more familiar with his methods. Every attack teaches Chance something about the organization, and every mistake made by Fouchon gives Chance another piece of information. The criminal mastermind is slowly giving his enemy the knowledge needed to fight back. By the end of this stage, the conflict is no longer a simple investigation. It has become a direct battle between Chance and the entire world Fouchon has created. Natasha's search for her father has exposed a terrible secret, and Chance has chosen to stand beside her until the truth is revealed. Fouchon and Van Cleef are preparing for a final attempt to regain control, while Chance is preparing for the fight he knows is coming. The hunters still believe they are in charge, but Chance has begun turning their own methods against them. The closer the story moves toward its final confrontation, the more dangerous the battle becomes, and soon Chance will have to prove whether his training and determination are enough to survive the men who have made hunting people their favorite game. The situation reaches a critical point as Chance Boudreaux and Natasha Binder continue moving deeper into the dangerous world created by Émile Fouchon. By now, Chance understands that there is almost no chance of solving the mystery quietly. Fouchon knows that Chance is interfering with his operation, and the criminals around him are becoming more aggressive. Natasha is still determined to learn exactly what happened to her father, even though every new discovery makes the truth more painful. Chance remains beside her because he knows she could never survive the people hunting them without protection. Their investigation has now become a fight for survival, and the people on the other side are preparing to make their most dangerous moves yet. Fouchon is increasingly concerned about the possibility that his operation could be exposed. He has spent years building a secret business based on wealthy clients who pay to hunt human beings. The entire operation depends on secrecy and control. If the authorities discover what he has been doing, everything could collapse. This is why Chance represents such a serious threat. He is not frightened by Fouchon and he refuses to disappear. Instead, Chance continues investigating and searching for evidence that could connect the criminals to Natasha's missing father. Fouchon realizes that eliminating Chance is no longer optional. If the former Marine survives much longer, he could destroy everything Fouchon has built. Pic Van Cleef is more than willing to help solve the problem. He sees Chance as an opponent who needs to be defeated, and his confidence in his own abilities makes him especially dangerous. Van Cleef has spent years working alongside Fouchon and understands the hunting operation better than almost anyone. He knows how the hunters track their targets and how victims usually react when they realize they are being pursued. But Chance does not react like an ordinary victim. He stays calm, studies his surroundings, and thinks several steps ahead. Van Cleef knows that this makes Chance dangerous, but his pride also makes him believe that he can eventually outsmart and overpower him. Natasha's emotional struggle becomes stronger as she gets closer to learning what happened to Douglas. She has spent so much time searching for her father that the possibility of discovering a terrible truth is difficult to accept. Yet she knows that she cannot stop. Chance encourages her to remain focused and reminds her that the criminals want her to give up. If she stops asking questions, Fouchon and his associates will remain free to continue their operation. Natasha understands this and becomes even more determined. She is no longer searching only for her father. She also wants justice for everyone who has been treated as a target by these wealthy hunters. Chance begins realizing that their biggest advantage is that Fouchon is too confident. The criminal believes his money and influence make him untouchable, so he does not expect someone like Chance to challenge him. Chance decides to use this arrogance against him. Instead of rushing directly into danger, he watches and waits. He knows that the criminals will eventually reveal themselves because they cannot resist controlling the situation. The more Fouchon tries to trap Chance, the more information Chance can gather. This turns the conflict into a psychological battle. Fouchon believes he is hunting Chance, while Chance is quietly studying the hunter. The danger becomes more immediate when Chance realizes that Natasha could be used against him. Fouchon knows that Chance's strongest motivation is protecting her, so attacking Natasha could force Chance into making a mistake. This possibility makes Chance even more protective. He cannot allow Natasha to become an easy target, but he also knows that keeping her completely hidden is impossible. Natasha refuses to abandon the investigation, and Chance respects her determination. Instead of telling her to run away, he prepares her to survive. He wants her to understand that she must remain alert because the criminals may attack without warning. As they continue, Chance becomes more comfortable with the idea of confronting the organization directly. He has spent much of the story reacting to threats, but now he is beginning to think like a hunter himself. He studies the people coming after them and starts understanding how they communicate and move. This is a dangerous transformation because Chance is stepping into the same environment that Fouchon created. The difference is that Chance is not hunting innocent people for pleasure. He is using his skills to defend himself and protect others. His experience allows him to turn the criminals' methods against them, making him increasingly difficult to control. Van Cleef becomes more determined to face Chance personally. He sees the former Marine as a challenge to his reputation, and he wants the satisfaction of defeating someone with Chance's background. But Chance does not share the same ego. He is not interested in proving that he is a better fighter. His only concern is surviving the conflict and getting Natasha through it safely. This makes the two men fundamentally different. Van Cleef is motivated by pride and violence, while Chance is motivated by responsibility. In a dangerous confrontation, that difference could determine who remains standing. The situation also forces Natasha to become more courageous. At the beginning of her search, she was simply a daughter looking for her missing father. Now she has witnessed enough danger to understand that the people responsible will not stop easily. She has learned to trust Chance and to recognize the warning signs around her. She still feels fear, but fear no longer controls her decisions. Her determination becomes one of the strongest emotional elements of the story. She wants to know the truth and she refuses to allow the criminals to decide what she is allowed to discover. Fouchon's organization begins losing the sense of control it once had. The hunters are still armed and dangerous, but Chance has disrupted their confidence. Every time they expect him to behave like prey, he responds differently. Every time they believe they have cornered him, he finds another way out. This unpredictability becomes a major problem for Fouchon. His entire business depends on knowing how the game will unfold. Chance is changing the game simply by refusing to follow the rules. The criminals may have created the hunt, but Chance is proving that the hunter can become vulnerable too. The search for Douglas Binder becomes more personal, as Natasha realizes that the people involved may have been hiding the truth for a long time. Chance stays with her as she confronts each new discovery. He knows that the final answers may be painful, but he also believes Natasha has a right to know. Their partnership has now become strong enough that neither of them wants to walk away. Chance could still leave and save himself, but he chooses to continue. Natasha could stop the investigation and protect herself, but she refuses. Together, they continue toward the center of Fouchon's operation. By the end of this stage, the final confrontation is clearly approaching. Fouchon knows that Chance has become too dangerous to leave alive, and Van Cleef is preparing to face him. Natasha is closer than ever to learning the truth about her father, while Chance is ready to challenge the criminals responsible. The hunters have weapons, money, and experience, but Chance has something that makes him especially dangerous. He refuses to surrender. The people who once treated human lives as part of a game are about to discover that Chance Boudreaux is not willing to play by their rules. The hunt is moving toward its most violent stage, and soon the criminals will have to face the consequences of everything they have done. The conflict is now reaching its most dangerous stage as Chance Boudreaux prepares to confront the people responsible for the deadly human hunting operation. Natasha Binder has come too far to turn back, and the truth about her missing father is finally beginning to come together. Chance knows that Emile Fouchon and Pic Van Cleef will not simply allow them to walk away after discovering what has been happening. Fouchon's entire world depends on secrecy, and Chance has become the biggest threat that world has ever faced. Natasha is frightened by what could happen next, but she remains determined to uncover the truth. Chance stays beside her, knowing that the final stages of the investigation could put both of their lives at risk. Fouchon becomes increasingly desperate because his usual methods are no longer enough. He has always relied on fear, money, and armed men to maintain control. The people he hunts normally have nowhere to turn, which allows him to treat them as disposable targets. But Chance has changed the situation completely. He knows how criminals operate, understands how hunters think, and refuses to panic when he is threatened. Fouchon realizes that if Chance survives, his secret operation could be exposed. This makes Chance more than an enemy. He has become a direct threat to Fouchon's entire way of life. Fouchon therefore prepares to use everything available to him to make sure Chance does not survive. Pic Van Cleef is ready for the confrontation as well. He has been waiting for the opportunity to prove that he is better than Chance. Van Cleef sees himself as a professional hunter, someone who can track and eliminate any target placed in front of him. But Chance is not an ordinary target, and Van Cleef knows it. Their coming confrontation carries a personal element because both men represent completely different ideas of strength. Van Cleef uses his abilities to destroy people for money and entertainment, while Chance uses his training to protect himself and others. Van Cleef believes strength comes from being willing to kill, while Chance understands that real strength also requires discipline and control. Natasha continues searching for the final answers about Douglas Binder. She knows that the truth may be devastating, but she refuses to let fear stop her. Chance understands her need for closure and promises to help her see the investigation through. He also knows that Natasha's determination is exactly what has brought them this far. Without her refusal to give up, Fouchon's operation might have remained hidden. Her search has exposed the existence of a world where wealthy people paid to hunt human beings, and now Chance intends to make sure the people responsible cannot simply escape. Natasha is no longer just looking for her father. She is fighting against the criminals who turned his disappearance into another secret. The pressure around Chance and Natasha continues increasing. The criminals begin closing in, and Chance knows that they may be trying to force him into a position where he cannot protect Natasha. He studies every movement and keeps himself prepared for an attack. His military experience allows him to remain calm, even when the situation becomes chaotic. He knows that panic can be more dangerous than an armed enemy. If he loses focus for even a moment, Natasha could become vulnerable. This is why Chance refuses to become distracted by anger. He wants revenge against the people who have caused so much suffering, but his first priority remains keeping Natasha alive. Fouchon, however, believes that Chance's determination will eventually become his weakness. He knows that Chance cares about Natasha, and he hopes to use that connection against him. Fouchon has never understood genuine loyalty because most of his relationships are based on money or fear. He assumes that if Natasha is placed in enough danger, Chance will make a reckless decision. But Chance's feelings for Natasha do not make him careless. Instead, they make him more focused. He knows exactly what is at stake, and that gives him a stronger reason to think before acting. The final stages of the hunt also reveal the difference between Chance and the people he is fighting. The criminals enjoy the feeling of power they get from hunting helpless people. Chance does not enjoy violence. He uses it only when necessary. This makes his actions more controlled and purposeful. When he fights, he does not waste energy trying to prove himself. Every move has a reason. His goal is to survive, protect Natasha, and destroy the operation that has already taken innocent lives. This practical approach gives Chance an advantage against enemies who allow arrogance and excitement to influence their decisions. Van Cleef's confidence, however, continues growing. He believes that his experience and willingness to kill make him superior. He expects Chance to eventually make a mistake because the pressure is becoming too great. But Chance has survived difficult situations before, and he knows that the most dangerous moment is often when an enemy believes victory is already guaranteed. He waits for opportunities instead of rushing into fights. This patience frustrates Van Cleef because it prevents him from controlling the pace of the confrontation. The hunter wants Chance to react emotionally, but Chance refuses to give him that advantage. Natasha becomes more aware of how much Chance has sacrificed for her. He has repeatedly placed himself in danger even though he could have walked away. This creates a deeper bond between them. Natasha realizes that Chance is not helping her because he expects something in return. He has chosen to stand with her because he believes what happened to her father was wrong. Chance, meanwhile, has discovered that protecting Natasha has given him a purpose beyond simply surviving from one day to the next. His life had become directionless, but now he has a reason to fight. Their connection gives the final confrontation greater emotional weight. As Chance prepares to confront Fouchon's organization, he understands that the criminals may have one last advantage: numbers. Fouchon has access to armed men and wealthy hunters, while Chance is essentially fighting with limited support. But Chance has already learned that numbers do not guarantee victory. The criminals are used to controlling the environment, while Chance has learned how to adapt. He can use darkness, buildings, streets, and unexpected movements to create openings. His experience gives him the ability to turn a disadvantage into an opportunity. The criminals may believe they have surrounded him, but Chance is waiting for the right moment to strike back. The confrontation with Fouchon becomes increasingly unavoidable. Fouchon has spent the entire story believing that he is the one controlling the hunt, but Chance has gradually reversed that situation. The criminals started by seeing Chance as someone who could be removed easily. Then they realized he was a serious obstacle. Now they are forced to treat him as a dangerous enemy capable of destroying everything they built. Fouchon's fear is hidden behind confidence, but the danger is real. If Chance succeeds, the human hunting operation could collapse, and the people who have participated in it could finally be exposed. By the end of this stage, Chance and Natasha are standing at the edge of the final battle. Natasha is closer than ever to understanding the full truth about her father, while Chance is ready to face the men who have turned murder into entertainment. Fouchon believes he can still win because he has money, weapons, and people willing to kill for him. Van Cleef believes he can defeat Chance through skill and determination, but Chance has already survived their attempts to destroy him, and now he is coming for them instead of waiting to be hunted. The game has completely changed. The hunters are no longer chasing a helpless victim. They are facing a man who has learned their methods, understands their weaknesses, and is prepared to fight until their operation is brought down. The final confrontation begins as Chance Boudreaux moves directly against Émile Fouchon and the dangerous organization responsible for the human hunting operation. After everything he and Natasha Binder have experienced, Chance knows there is no turning back. The criminals have already taken innocent lives, destroyed families, and treated murder as entertainment for wealthy customers. Natasha has spent the entire story searching for her missing father, and now the truth is finally within reach. Chance understands that the only way to end the danger is to confront the people responsible. Fouchon has spent years believing that he controls the hunt, but he is about to discover that Chance is no longer willing to remain on the defensive. Fouchon and his men prepare for the final battle with confidence. They believe that their numbers and weapons will eventually overwhelm Chance. Fouchon has always trusted his ability to control people through fear, while Van Cleef believes his fighting experience will allow him to defeat Chance personally. But Chance enters the confrontation with a different mindset. He does not need to prove that he is stronger than every man around him. He simply needs to survive, protect Natasha, and stop the operation. His military training allows him to stay focused while the criminals become increasingly desperate. Every movement is calculated, and Chance uses the environment around him to create opportunities against enemies who believe they have the advantage. The fight becomes intense as Chance faces armed opponents one after another. The criminals expect him to become overwhelmed, but he uses his strength, speed, and combat experience to fight back. He moves quickly, avoids unnecessary attacks, and takes advantage of every mistake his enemies make. The people who once hunted helpless victims now find themselves facing someone who knows how to fight under pressure. Chance is not fighting for money or excitement. He is fighting because Natasha is in danger and because he wants to end the brutal operation. That purpose gives him the determination to continue even when the odds appear to be against him. Natasha also plays an important role as the final conflict develops. She has changed significantly since arriving in New Orleans. At the beginning, she was a determined daughter searching for her father, but she had little understanding of the danger surrounding her. Now she has witnessed the cruelty of Fouchon's organization and understands exactly what Chance is fighting against. She remains frightened, but she is no longer helpless. Her courage has grown because she refuses to let the criminals control her future. She wants justice for her father and for the other victims who were treated as targets. Chance's protection has given her the confidence to keep going even when the situation becomes terrifying. Fouchon begins to realize that his carefully controlled world is collapsing. His greatest mistake was believing that Chance could be treated like one of his ordinary victims. Chance does not run blindly or surrender to fear. He fights back, and every defeat suffered by Fauchon's men weakens the organization. Fauchon becomes increasingly desperate as the people around him are unable to stop Chance. The man who once watched human beings being hunted for his customers' entertainment is now facing the consequences of creating such a violent world. His wealth cannot protect him from every threat, and his control begins disappearing. The confrontation between Chance and Pick Van Cleef becomes one of the most important moments of the final battle. Van Cleef has spent much of the story believing that he is the superior hunter. He sees Chance as an opponent whose skills must be tested, but Chance has no interest in playing by Van Cleef's rules. Their fight is brutal and personal, with both men using everything they know to gain an advantage. Van Cleef relies heavily on his confidence and experience, while Chance remains focused on survival. The battle demonstrates the difference between them. Van Cleef fights because violence is part of his identity, while Chance fights because he has something worth protecting. As the fight continues, Chance refuses to give Van Cleef the satisfaction of controlling him. He remains determined even when the confrontation becomes physically exhausting. His ability to stay focused gives him an advantage because Van Cleef's anger and pride begin affecting his decisions. The hunter wants to win so badly that he becomes increasingly aggressive, while Chance waits for the right moment. Eventually, Chance is able to turn the situation in his favor. Van Cleef's confidence is finally broken, and the man who once believed himself to be an unstoppable hunter is defeated by the very qualities he underestimated in Chance. With Van Cleef no longer able to protect Fouchon, the criminal mastermind is left facing the consequences of his actions. Fouchon tries to maintain control, but his organization has been destroyed around him. The hunters and criminals who once followed his orders are no longer enough to protect him. Chance has exposed the weakness behind Fouchon's confidence. His entire operation depended on the belief that victims would always be powerless. But Chance refused to become powerless, and Natasha refused to stop searching for her father. Together, they have destroyed the secrecy that allowed Fouchon to operate. Natasha finally receives the answers she has been seeking about her father. The truth is painful, but knowing what happened allows her to begin moving forward. Her journey was never simply about finding a person. It was about understanding why he disappeared and making sure his death was not forgotten. Chance has helped her through the entire process, risking his own life to give her the chance to find justice. Natasha realizes how much Chance has done for her, and their connection becomes one of the most meaningful results of everything they have survived. The downfall of Fouchon's operation also means that the victims of the human hunts will no longer be treated as targets. The criminals who believed they could purchase human lives have finally been challenged. The story makes it clear that the real power of Fouchon's organization came from people believing they could never be stopped. Chance breaks that belief by refusing to surrender. He proves that courage and determination can challenge even a powerful criminal network when someone is willing to fight for what is right. The hunters created their own rules, but Chance destroys those rules by turning the hunt back against them. After the final confrontation, Chance is no longer the same man he was when the story began. At first, he was simply a former Marine trying to survive and find his place in the world. He had no major mission and no reason to become involved in someone else's problems. But Natasha's search changed everything. By helping her, Chance discovered a purpose that was bigger than himself. He stood against criminals who believed money gave them control over human life, and he proved that they could be defeated. His journey shows that a person does not need wealth or influence to make a difference. Sometimes courage and determination are enough. Natasha also finishes her journey stronger than before. She came to New Orleans searching for her father, not knowing that the investigation would place her in the middle of a deadly criminal operation. She faced fear, violence, and heartbreaking discoveries, but she never abandoned her goal. Chance's presence helped her survive, but Natasha's own determination was equally important. She refused to let the criminals decide what happened to her or what she was allowed to know. By the end, she has gained the truth and survived the dangers surrounding her. The story of Hard Target ultimately becomes a battle between those who treat human beings as prey and someone who refuses to accept that idea. Emile Fouchon believes people can be bought, hunted, and killed for entertainment. Chance Boudreaux believes that innocent lives are worth protecting. Their conflict turns the hunter and prey concept upside down. The man Fouchon expects to become another victim instead becomes the person who destroys his operation. Chance survives because he combines physical strength with discipline, intelligence, and determination. Natasha survives because she refuses to give up on her father. In the end, the deadly game created by Fouchon is brought to an end, and the people responsible for the human hunts are defeated. Chance has faced armed criminals, dangerous hunters, and one of the most ruthless men he has ever encountered, yet he never allows fear to control him. Natasha finally has the truth she came searching for, and the nightmare surrounding her father is no longer a mystery. Chance walks away from the conflict having discovered something important about himself as well. He is not simply a man trying to survive anymore. He is someone willing to stand up when innocent people are threatened. Hard Target closes with the idea that the hunter can become the hunted, and when the wrong person is chosen as prey, the entire game can turn against those who created it.